everybody, this is Glenda with Shaking Hands Art with Fralins and Friends. If you're new here, please do subscribe, click that notification bell, and if you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. If you're new or if you are returning but haven't subscribed yet. Now, I am going to be painting tonight, and it's going to be a story. But this is a different one that I've told before. This is about a woman named Ruth. I'm going to start with a small little city up here, just kind of in the corner. Kind of a little cityscape view or something. And this is going to be Moab. Moab is not it's a small part of the story. They've lived there a long time, but we're at the point where they are now leaving. Outside the city, Naomi has buried her husband. Elimelech. It's those Old Testament names are hard. At least Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah are not so hard. Up here, we're going to paint a stone and grave for Naomi's husband, Elimelech. But he's not going to be buried alone for long. Naomi stayed behind with her two sons, and they later married two Moabite women, one named Ruth and one named Orpah. And then the sons died. So we're going to put two more graves here for Naomi's sons. Now, if you can imagine, she's just lost all of her family except her two daughter-in-laws. So she's not a young woman anymore. She's probably got some gray hair. Naomi hears that God has shown some mercy on his people and that he has sent a plenty again. The famine is over. And so she decides that she's going to return to Bethlehem. And she tells Orpah and Ruth to return to their families. And they don't at first. I'm making a path there toward Bethlehem. And Naomi says, no, you need to go back to your family. And Orpah, she does. She goes back to her family. But Ruth is adamant. She is going to stay with Naomi. And she does. And, okay, I'm putting a cityscape in here for the walls of Bethlehem. Now, a lot of cities and nations back then had walls, and they had what they called gates. And I'm sure the gates were guarded, and there were often housing in the walls. And they were there for protection because there was a lot of warring back then. They were small nations, a lot of them, and they in the land of Canaan where Abraham had been promised, and they returned after escaping Egypt. There were quite a few nations or small nations that had risen there, and so Israel had quite a fight on their hands. But this is the time of the judges. This is still when they are living under the rule of judges, or judges are making decisions in disputes. And Naomi has returned, and Ruth has followed her. When Naomi gets to the town and people welcome her, she more or less wants to hide. She doesn't even want to be called by her name because she feels like God has punished her by taking her husband and her sons. Now, how often do we feel like there's just something against us? Somebody's against us, or God has forgotten us, or is punishing us for things. Most often, they're things that just happen. So now that there's no longer a drought or famine in Bethlehem, she's returned. But she really doesn't want anybody to be kind to her, really. She's punishing herself. But Ruth, she sticks with her. There's nothing going to take Ruth away from Naomi. And in the next chapter, we will see a beautiful love story blossom. At least the beginnings of it. And Naomi isn't as out of the picture as she seems to think. And we'll get to that later, too. Let's take care of the beginning of the story. So I'm going to fill in the painting here, and we'll come back. I want to put some different interesting things in here. When I do these story paintings, a lot of times things that I paint are implying that there's something. This is implying that there is a forest here. Now, these could be olive trees, fig trees, evergreen trees. They could be any kind of trees that grow in that part of the world. And a lot of the farming would have also been outside of the city. The next one of these that I do, which might be next week, I don't know. It will involve a farmer. Okay, so let me get these women in here. Okay, I'm giving Naomi gray hair. She's older by now. Her 2 sons have passed away. Her husband is gone. And she's still in mourning. But I'm putting Ruth a little farther back. Ruth is following at this point. She's going to follow the wisdom of her mother-in-law. And she's also being very respectful. That's just the way I'm painting this, because she is respectful of her. And I haven't made the path wide enough for 2 people. Okay, a little joke in there. Anyway, they are returning to Bethlehem. Naomi is from there, But Ruth has never been to Bethlehem, probably never even been in the vicinity. And I don't do well with features. So you have to just understand, it's the story. And I am making the women kind of large figures in the story because they are what the story is about. So Naomi and Ruth, they are going to Bethlehem. Now Bethlehem is down there at the bottom. I'm going to be putting some light in there and or living quarters within the walls surrounding the city. So they'd be private, and they probably would house families of guards or soldiers, or I don't know. I'm just putting that in there because I don't know. But it's still the time of the judges, and they are returning. And Naomi is she feels that God has stricken her or afflicted her because of the loss of her husband and sons. Now, there's a lot of times when we feel that way. It doesn't mean that he has singled us out in any way. It just means that a lot of times we just feel like that. It's part of grieving. So, oh, that kind of turned out wrong. So this is Bethlehem, and they are returning to Bethlehem. That's too wet. Put a little paint on the end. See how this works. Try anything, guys. I'll probably do this over again when I... Okay. This is why we call it shaky hands art. Because my hands shake something terrible. Okay, I should have stuck with my guns and said I wasn't going to do any. But yeah, it's done now. I'm going to put... Now, yeah, they probably would have head coverings on. I'm going to make a well here. Wells were often common. Not everybody had their own well. A lot of times wells were common for a community. Some may have had more than one well, I don't know. But they would have probably been built over a stream or over a spring. Yep. But I probably will retell it I go through so many brushes. I decided to go ahead and give them some headdresses anyway, because they would have. Ruth is full of romance and intrigue and some very beautiful surprises.